The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with the usual morning chatter. Delegates from across the galaxy took their assigned seats, reviewing data tablets and greeting familiar faces. The massive dome above them showed the swirling colors of the Nexus Prime Nebula, casting soft light on the curved rows of seats that held representatives from over 300 worlds. Ambassador Crix of the Zephyrian Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes and glanced toward the human section. The chair marked with Earth's blue and green symbol sat empty. This was unusual. Ambassador Sarah Chen always arrived early, usually with a steaming cup of that bitter human drink they called coffee. She would sit quietly, reviewing her notes, and occasionally nodding to other delegates. The hegemony's representative, Ambassador Veltar, noticed the empty seat, too. His 4 eyes scanned the hall, looking for any sign of the human delegation. The humans were always punctual. In 30 years of council membership, they had never missed a session without prior notice. Council Speaker Tharn called the session to order. His deep voice echoed through the hall as delegates settled into their seats. The first item on the agenda was trade route security in the Outer Rim. Usually, the humans would have something to say about this. They operated several shipping lanes in that sector. "Before we begin," Speaker Tharn announced, "I have received several communications that require the Council's attention." Crix leaned forward. He had received a strange message that morning from the Human Diplomatic Corps. It was brief and formal, nothing like their usual detailed reports. "The human delegation has submitted a formal notice of withdrawal from all council activities," Speaker Tharn continued. His words fell like stones into still water. "This withdrawal is effective immediately." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Several delegates turned to look at the empty human seats. The Crystalline Collective's representative, a being made of living crystal, chimed in confusion. "Did they provide any explanation for this action?" Speaker Tharn shook his head. The message was brief. They thanked the Council for 30 years of cooperation and stated they were withdrawing from all formal galactic relations. No further details were provided. Ambassador Veltar stood up, his tall frame casting a shadow over nearby seats. "This makes no sense. The humans were scheduled to present their annual trade report next week. They had 3 research projects in committee review. Why would they leave so suddenly?" The question hung in the air. No one had an answer. Crix pulled up the message he had received on his personal tablet. The text was simple and cold. "The Human Federation hereby withdraws from all Galactic Council activities and formal diplomatic relations. We thank you for 30 years of cooperation. May your future endeavors bring prosperity to all species." It was signed by Director Williams of the Human Diplomatic Corps, not by Ambassador Chen. That was strange, too. Sarah Chen had been the human voice in the council for over a decade. She was respected, even liked by many delegates. Her sudden absence felt wrong. "Perhaps we should contact their home system," suggested the Ethereal Dominion's representative. Her voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "There may have been some misunderstanding." Speaker Tharn nodded. "I will authorize immediate communication with the Sol system. In the meantime, we must continue with today's agenda." But the Council's attention was scattered. Delegates whispered among themselves, speculating about the human departure. The humans had been model members of the galactic community. They shared technology freely, contributed to peacekeeping efforts, and had helped resolve countless disputes between other species. During the lunch break, Crix approached several other delegates. "Have any of you heard rumors about human dissatisfaction with the Council?" The answers were all the same. No one had noticed any signs of unhappiness from the human delegation. If anything, the humans had seemed more engaged lately, submitting more proposals and offering assistance with various galactic crises. Ambassador Veltar joined the conversation. "I spoke with Sarah Chen just last week about the mining rights dispute in the Centauri sector. She was enthusiastic about the mediation process. This makes no sense." The afternoon session proceeded, But something felt different. The humans usually contributed to most discussions, offering practical solutions or asking thoughtful questions. Their absence left an odd silence in the hall. As the day ended, Speaker Tharn received a report from the communications team. "The Sol system is not responding to our diplomatic channels," he announced. "However, their automated trade beacons are still functioning. Ships report normal passage through human-controlled space, but no direct communication with human authorities." Over the following days, more reports came in. Human colonies across the galaxy had gone silent. Not dead or destroyed, but simply not communicating with non-human entities. Trade continued through automated systems, but no human voices answered calls. The human embassy on Nexus Prime stood empty. Security cameras showed that the building was clean and well-maintained, but no staff remained. A simple holographic message played at the entrance. "The Human Federation thanks the Galactic Council for 30 years of partnership. This embassy is now closed." Crix visited the embassy personally. Walking through the empty halls felt eerie. Everything was perfectly organized, as if the humans had simply vanished into thin air. Computer terminals were wiped clean, but the building's systems still functioned. Even the plants in the lobby were healthy and watered. In Ambassador Chen's former office, Crix found a single item left behind: a small earth plant in a ceramic pot. A note was attached: "For whoever comes next. Water twice a week. Humans believe all living things deserve care." The simplicity of the message bothered Crix more than any angry declaration would have. There was no bitterness, no accusation, no demand for explanation. Just a quiet goodbye and concern for a plant. Within a week, the full scope of humanity's departure became clear. They had withdrawn from every joint research project, peacekeeping mission, and trade agreement. Human-operated facilities were handed over to automated systems or local authorities. Transition was smooth and professional, but final. The galaxy had lost its most cooperative member without warning, without drama, and without explanation. The humans had simply decided they were done with galactic politics and had acted accordingly. As Crix returned to his quarters that evening, he couldn't shake the feeling that something important had been lost. The humans had never been the strongest, military power, or the richest trading empire. They had been something else entirely. They had been the species that others could count on for help, for fairness, for solutions that worked for everyone. Now they were gone, and Crix was starting to wonder if the galaxy would notice what it had lost. The empty chair in the council hall seemed to grow more significant each day, a silent reminder that sometimes the most important contributions are only recognized after they disappear. The human departure had been quiet, professional, and thorough. No angry speeches, no threats, no demands. They had simply walked away from a galaxy that had taken them for granted, leaving behind only questions and the growing realization that things were about to become much more difficult for everyone left behind. 3 weeks after the human departure, the first signs of trouble appeared in the most unexpected places. The Andromedean Mining Consortium had always prided itself on having the most advanced ore extraction techniques in the galaxy. Their mining ships could strip an asteroid clean in hours, processing rare minerals at incredible speeds. The technology had made them wealthy and powerful, able to supply raw materials to half the known galaxy. Chief Engineer Zoltan stared at the production. Reports in disbelief. Output was down 60% across all mining operations. The extraction equipment kept malfunctioning, and the processing algorithms were producing massive amounts of waste instead of refined materials. "Run the diagnostics again," he ordered his team for the 5th time that day. The results were always the same. The equipment was functioning normally, but somehow the techniques that had worked perfectly for 15 years were now failing. Zoltan pulled up the original research files, hoping to find the source of the problem. What he found made his stomach drop. The breakthrough mining formulas had come from a joint research project with human scientists from the Earth Mining Institute. The humans had shared their knowledge freely, publishing papers in galactic scientific journals and training Andromedean engineers in the new techniques. Without human oversight and constant small adjustments to the processes, everything was falling. Apart on the other side of the galaxy, the Crystalline Collective faced a similar crisis. Their defensive shields had failed during a routine military exercise, nearly destroying their flagship. The shield technology had made them the premier defense contractors for dozens of worlds. Now their contracts were being canceled as word spread about the system failures. Engineer Prime Quartz examined the shield generator cores with growing panic. The crystalline matrices were perfect, the energy flow was stable, but the underlying mathematical formulas that controlled the shield, harmonics were beyond their understanding. "Contact the Human Research Station on Kepler 442, Quartz ordered. "Sir," replied a subordinate, "the human station went dark 2 weeks ago. All human facilities have closed their communication channels." Quartz began pulling historical records. The shield technology breakthrough had happened 8 years ago during a collaborative project with human physicists. The humans had provided the mathematical framework that made the crystal-based shields possible. They had published their work openly and helped train crystalline technicians. Now, without human mathematical expertise, the shields were just expensive decorations. Ambassador Veltar received the first reports of system failures during his morning briefing. Mining consortiums, defense contractors, agricultural collectives, and technology firms across the galaxy were reporting mysterious equipment failures and production problems. At first, the problems seemed unrelated. Different species, different technologies, different sectors of the galaxy. But as Veltar investigated further, a disturbing pattern emerged. Every failing system had some connection to human research or collaboration. The hegemony's own agricultural sector was struggling. Food production on 12 worlds had dropped by 40%. The soil enhancement techniques that had revolutionized farming in the hegemony were failing without constant adjustments that only human agricultural scientists seemed to understand. Veltar decided to visit the human embassy again. The building still stood empty, its systems still functioning perfectly. He walked through the halls, looking for any clue about why the humans had left so suddenly. In the embassy's research library, Veltar found thousands of scientific papers, technical manuals, and collaborative project reports. All had been left behind, freely available to anyone who wanted to access them. But reading the papers and understanding how to implement the knowledge were very different things. A holographic message activated when Veltar entered the main library. Ambassador Sarah Chen's image appeared, smiling warmly. "If you're seeing this message, it means humanity has withdrawn from galactic affairs," she said. "We want you to know that all research data and technical specifications remain available for galactic use. We hope this knowledge continues to benefit all species, even in our absence." The message continued. "We've left detailed instructions for maintaining the systems we helped develop. However, some technologies require ongoing collaboration and adjustment. We encourage the galactic community to work together to solve these challenges." Veltar felt a chill. The humans had known their departure would cause problems, but they had left anyway. They had provided all the information needed to continue their work, but something was still missing. Meanwhile, communication networks across the galaxy began experiencing problems. The galactic internet, which connected thousands of worlds and enabled instant communication between species, started suffering massive slowdowns and outages. The network had been humanity's first major contribution to galactic society 30 years ago. They had designed it to grow organically, with each new world adding to its capability. But the humans had always maintained the core server farms that kept everything running smoothly. Those server farms were now operating on automatic protocols, without human technicians to make adjustments and improvements. The network was slowly, degrading, becoming less efficient each day. Technical teams from across the galaxy tried to access the server farms, but they were all located in human space. Automated systems politely denied access to non-human personnel. The servers would continue running, but no one could fix problems or make improvements. The Thrakari Confederation discovered their own crisis when their space elevators began experiencing structural stress. The carbon nanotube cables that made the elevators possible had been a joint development project with human materials scientists. The humans had provided the molecular engineering techniques needed to create cables strong enough to reach orbit. Now, without human expertise in nanotube maintenance, the cables were developing microscopic flaws that could lead to catastrophic failure. The Thrakari had the original research data, but they lacked the practical experience to apply it safely. Similar stories emerged from across the galaxy. The ethereal dominion's consciousness transfer technology depended on human neuroscience. Research. The Zephyrian Empire's faster-than-light communication system used human-designed quantum entanglement protocols. Even the Council's own universal translation system was based on human linguistic algorithms. In every case, the technology worked, but optimizing it, improving it, or fixing problems required human knowledge and experience that was no longer available. Ambassador Crix called an emergency council session. As delegates gathered in the Great Hall, the empty human seats seemed more significant than ever. The chamber felt smaller, somehow incomplete. "We are facing a galaxy-wide technological crisis," Crix announced. "Systems that have worked perfectly for years are failing. Production is down across multiple sectors. Our investigation has revealed that these problems all trace back to human technological contributions." The hall erupted in concerned voices. Delegates who had never paid much attention to human activities suddenly realized how deeply integrated humanity had become in galactic civilization. "The humans shared their knowledge freely," continued Crix. "But knowledge and wisdom are different things. We have their research data, but we lack their understanding of how to apply it." Speaker Tharn stood to address the assembly. "We must contact the humans immediately. This crisis threatens galactic stability." But attempts to contact human space continued to fail. The Sol system remained sealed, responding only with automated messages thanking the galaxy for its cooperation and requesting that human sovereignty be respected. The humans had left behind all their knowledge and technology, but they had taken with them something more valuable: their understanding of how to make it all work together. The galaxy was discovering that having the blueprints for a machine was very different from knowing how to operate it. As the emergency session continued, late into the night, one fact became increasingly clear. The galaxy had lost more than just another member species. They had lost the engineers who had been quietly keeping galactic civilization running smoothly for 3 decades. And now, as systems failed and problems mounted, they were beginning to understand just how much they had depended on humanity's silent contributions to their daily lives. 3 months after humanity's departure, Ambassador Crix stood at the observation deck of his flagship, staring at the edge of human space. The Sol system lay before them, protected by a defensive grid that defied easy understanding. The human ships that had escorted his diplomatic fleet to this position moved with an efficiency that made his experienced naval officers nervous. "They're not threatening us," reported Captain Vex from the bridge. "But they're making it very clear that we're not welcome to proceed further." Crix had volunteered to lead this diplomatic mission after the Council's emergency sessions revealed the true scope of the crisis. Without human involvement, galactic civilization was slowly falling apart. Supply chains had collapsed, communication, networks were failing, and several minor wars had broken out as the careful balance of power that humans had helped maintain began to crumble. A transmission came through on the standard diplomatic frequency. The voice was polite but firm, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "This is Commander Harrison of the Earth Defense Force. Your delegation is welcome to remain at the system's edge for diplomatic purposes, but we must respectfully request that you do not proceed further into human space. Crix activated his own transmission. Commander, I am Ambassador Crix of the Galactic Council. We request an audience with human leadership to discuss the current crisis affecting galactic civilization. There was a long pause before the response came. Ambassador, humanity appreciates the Council's interest in dialogue. However, we must decline formal diplomatic engagement at this time. We ask that you respect our decision to remain withdrawn from galactic affairs. Commander, you must understand that the galaxy is facing serious problems since your departure. Systems are failing, conflicts are increasing, and we are aware of the situation, Ambassador. The voice interrupted gently. Humanity wishes the galactic community well in resolving these challenges. However, our withdrawal from Council space is final. Crix felt frustration building. May I ask why? What did the Council do to cause this sudden departure? Another long pause. When the voice returned, it carried a note of sadness. Nothing specific, Ambassador. Humanity simply decided that our energy would be better spent on other pursuits. We wish you safe travels back to Council space. The transmission ended, leaving Crix staring at the human defensive grid. The technology was clearly beyond anything the Council possessed. The ships moved in perfect coordination. Their energy signatures were unlike anything in galactic databases, and their defensive positions suggested military thinking far in advance of Council strategic doctrine. As his fleet prepared to return to Council space, Crix received reports from his intelligence officers that made the situation even more puzzling. Long-range sensors showed that human colonies beyond the Sol system were thriving. Agricultural output was up, industrial production was increasing, and new construction projects were visible on dozens of worlds. The humans weren't struggling. Without the galaxy, they were prospering. Back on Nexus Prime, the Council faced its worst crisis in a century. The Andromedean Mining Consortium had filed for bankruptcy after their production fell below sustainable levels. The Crystalline Collective's defense contracts had been canceled, leading to massive unemployment on their home worlds. Communication blackouts were becoming routine as the galactic internet continued to degrade. Ambassador Veltar spent his days reading old Council session records, trying to understand what had gone wrong. The more he read, the more disturbed he became. In the records, he found a pattern of subtle dismissal toward human proposals. When humans suggested peaceful solutions to conflicts, other delegates often pushed for more aggressive approaches. When humans offered to share technology freely, some council members privately questioned their motives. When humans advocated for smaller species' rights, the major powers often overruled them. One particular session from 2 years ago made Veltar's blood run cold. The humans had proposed a new approach to handling disputes between major powers and smaller civilizations. Their plan would have given minor species more voice in galactic affairs and reduced the influence of military might in political decisions. The proposal had been voted down, with several delegates making jokes about human idealism and naive optimism. Ambassador Chen had accepted the defeat gracefully, as she always did, but Veltar now remembered the look in her eyes. It hadn't been anger or frustration. It had been disappointment. The Ethereal Dominion's representative brought disturbing news to the next council session. We've lost contact with 3 of our research stations. The consciousness transfer experiments have become unstable without human neuroscience support. 2 researchers are in critical condition. Similar reports came from across the galaxy. The Thrakari Confederation had been forced to shut down 2 of their space elevators due to cable stress. The Zephyrian Empire's trade routes were taking twice as long to navigate without human mathematical optimization. Even basic interstellar navigation was becoming more difficult as the positioning systems that humans had helped design slowly drifted out of alignment. But the most shocking revelation came from the Council's own archives. A junior archivist named Plexus had been researching the history of galactic technological advancement for her doctoral thesis. What she found made her request an immediate audience with the Council leadership. "Honored delegates," Plexus said, her voice shaking with nervousness, "I have discovered something important about galactic technological progress over the past 30 years. She activated a holographic display showing a timeline of major scientific breakthroughs. Red markers indicated purely non-human achievements, while blue markers showed human contributions or collaborations. The display was overwhelmingly blue. Every major advancement in the past 3 decades can be traced to human innovation or human-assisted research," Plexus explained. The cure for the crystalline plague came from human biochemists working with ethereal healers. The terraforming techniques that opened up the outer rim were developed by human ecologists. The peaceful resolution of the vegan war was achieved through human diplomatic methods. She highlighted specific cases. The agricultural revolution that ended hunger on 47 worlds used human farming techniques. The energy efficiency improvements that reduced galactic power consumption by 30% came from human engineering. Even our improved life support systems on space stations were designed by human environmental specialists. The Council sat in stunned silence as the full scope of human contributions became clear. They had been the galaxy's problem solvers, working quietly behind the scenes to make life better for everyone. Ambassador Crix stood up slowly. "How did we not notice this before?" Plexus looked uncomfortable. "Because humans rarely took credit for their work, sir. They published their research in open journals, shared their techniques freely, and worked as junior partners in collaborative projects. They seemed to prefer helping others succeed rather than claiming recognition for themselves." The weight of this revelation settled over the Council like a heavy blanket. The galaxy's most generous species had been treated as junior partners, while carrying the burden of actual innovation and problem-solving. Veltar accessed his personal files and found a conversation he'd had with Sarah Chen 6 months ago. She had mentioned that humans were re-evaluating their priorities and focusing more on internal development. At the time, he had thought she was talking about some minor policy shift. Now he realized she had been giving him a warning that he'd been too arrogant to understand. The hegemony's military attaché raised another disturbing point. "Our intelligence suggests that human military technology has advanced significantly since their withdrawal. Their defensive capabilities appear to exceed our current understanding." This news sent a chill through the assembly. The humans had never been considered a major military power. They preferred diplomacy and cooperation over shows of strength. But their recent display of advanced defensive systems suggested they had been developing capabilities far beyond what they showed to the galaxy. As the session ended, Council members were left with uncomfortable questions. Had humanity been hiding their true capabilities to avoid threatening other species? Had they been deliberately downplaying their technological advancement to maintain peaceful relations? Had they been the galaxy's caretakers all along working to maintain stability while everyone else focused on power and profit? The empty human seats in the Council chamber seemed to mock the remaining delegates. The species they had dismissed as idealistic and naive had quietly built a civilization advanced enough to walk away from the galaxy entirely. And now, as systems failed and conflicts multiplied across known space, the Council was beginning to understand that humanity hadn't just been members of galactic civilization. They had been its foundation, supporting everyone else while asking for nothing in return except the chance to help. That chance was gone now, and the galaxy was discovering what it meant to stand without the support they had never realized they were receiving. 6 months after humanity's departure, the galaxy was unraveling faster than anyone had imagined possible. The hegemony's mighty war machine, which had kept dozens of worlds in line through fear and superior firepower, suffered its first major defeat in over a century. A coalition of smaller species from the Outer Rim had somehow acquired defensive technology that made hegemony weapons useless. Ships that should have been destroyed in seconds absorbed massive amounts of energy and returned fire with weapons. That cut through hegemony armor like it was made of paper. General Korak stood in the wreckage of his command ship, staring at damage reports that made no sense. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his tactical officers. "These are primitive worlds with barely functional space travel." His intelligence chief, Major Thex, pulled up the battle recordings. "Sir, analysis of their defensive technology shows design patterns consistent with human engineering principles, but it's far more advanced than anything humans ever showed us." The revelation hit Korax like a physical blow. Somehow, the humans had been sharing their advanced technology with smaller species while hiding their true capabilities from the major powers. The coalition had fought with weapons and shields that were decades ahead of hegemony technology. Across the galaxy, the Zephyrian trade empire was collapsing as their carefully planned shipping routes descended into chaos. Without human mathematical optimization, cargo ships were taking dangerous paths through asteroid fields and gravitational anomalies. 3 major freight convoys had been lost in the past month, taking billions of credits worth of trade goods with them. Emperor Zix called an emergency meeting of his trade ministers. "How did our navigation become so dependent on human calculations?" he demanded. Trade Minister Flex pulled up historical records. "Your Majesty, 30 years ago, our trade routes were limited to safe but slow paths between systems. Human mathematicians offered to help us optimize our shipping lanes for speed and efficiency. They provided the calculations that allowed us to increase trade volume by 400%. And now, without their constant adjustments and improvements, the routes are becoming increasingly dangerous. Our pilots are reporting gravitational shifts that our calculations didn't predict. Several shipping lanes are now considered too risky to use." The Emperor's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Contact the humans immediately. Offer them whatever. They want to resume their assistance." "We've tried, Your Majesty. They're not responding to any diplomatic communications." Meanwhile, Ambassador Veltar made a discovery that changed everything. While researching Council archives for clues about humanity's departure, he found a hidden data file in the embassy's abandoned computer systems. The file was encrypted, but the password was simple: goodbye. Inside, he found Sarah Chen's personal logs from her years as Earth's representative to the Council. What he read made him sick to his stomach. The entries chronicled years of subtle dismissals, casual insults, and deliberate exclusions. Human proposals were routinely modified to benefit major powers at the expense of smaller species. Human offers to share technology were accepted gratefully, but humans were rarely invited to participate in the important political decisions that shaped galactic policy. One entry from 3 years ago was particularly damning. Today, the Council voted to approve military intervention in the Tau Ceti dispute, despite our proposal for diplomatic mediation. Ambassador Veltar told me privately that human solutions work fine for minor problems, but real conflicts require real power. I'm beginning to wonder if we're viewed as useful assistants rather than equal partners. Another entry from 18 months ago. The hegemony dismissed our concerns about their treatment of agricultural worlds, calling our objections emotional interference in practical politics. They seem to think compassion is a weakness rather than a strength. Maybe they're right? Maybe we're too soft for this galaxy. The final entry was dated just 1 week before humanity's departure. After 30 years of trying to make galactic civilization more just and peaceful, I'm forced to conclude that we're fighting a losing battle. The major powers see cooperation as submission and generosity as stupidity. They've learned to take our help while ignoring our values. Perhaps it's time to focus our energy on those who actually want to build something better. Veltar sat in the empty embassy, holding his head in his hands. The humans hadn't left because of any single incident. They had left because they realized they were wasting their time trying to reform a system that didn't want to be reformed. The political implications became clear when the Outer Rim Coalition formally announced their independence from Council authority. 27 worlds declared themselves the Cooperative Alliance and rejected all Council jurisdiction. Their declaration was simple but devastating. We choose cooperation over domination, innovation over tradition, and justice over convenience. We thank the Galactic Council for teaching us these lessons by showing us their opposites. Intelligence reports confirmed what everyone feared. The Cooperative Alliance was thriving under human guidance. Their worlds showed signs of rapid technological advancement. Their conflicts were resolved through mediation rather than warfare, and their populations enjoyed living standards that exceeded even the wealthiest Council worlds. Worse yet, more. Species were joining them every week. The Alliance wasn't conquering new members. They were simply accepting refugees from Council space who wanted to live in a society based on human principles of cooperation and mutual aid. The Council's response was predictable but disastrous. They declared the Alliance a threat to galactic stability and authorized military action to bring the rebel worlds back under Council authority. The campaign was a complete failure. Alliance defensive technology made Council weapons ineffective, while their ships moved with coordination that suggested battlefield awareness beyond anything Council military doctrine could counter. But the Alliance didn't pursue victory through conquest. Instead, they simply protected their own worlds and offered sanctuary to anyone who wanted to join them. The real blow came when the Alliance released a public statement that was broadcast across the entire galaxy. The Galactic Council operates on the principle that might makes right. They believe strength comes from the ability to dominate others. We operate on different principles. We believe strength comes from the ability to help others become stronger. We learned these principles from humanity, who spent 30 years trying to teach them to the galaxy. The statement continued. Humanity offered the galaxy a choice between cooperation and competition, between building each other up and tearing each other down. The Council made their choice clear. Now we are making ours. Ambassador Crix convened another emergency Council session, but attendance was the lowest in Council history. 12 major species had withdrawn from active participation, citing philosophical differences with Council policy. The Great Hall that once buzzed with hundreds of voices now echoed with the conversations of fewer than 50 delegates. We are facing the collapse of galactic civilization, Crix announced to the sparse assembly. Our authority is being challenged, our technology is failing, and our member species are abandoning us for an alliance that promises cooperation over control. The Crystalline Collective's representative chimed in with crystalline sadness. Perhaps we should ask ourselves why our own members prefer the Alliance to the Council. Speaker Tharn stood at his podium, looking older than his years. I have called this session to formally acknowledge what we all know but have been afraid to say. We made a terrible mistake when we took humanity for granted. The remaining delegates sat in uncomfortable silence. We treated them as useful subordinates rather than equal partners, Tharn continued. We accepted their gifts while dismissing their wisdom. We took their technology while rejecting their values. And when they offered us a chance to build something better, we chose to cling to the old ways of dominance and competition. Ambassador Veltar stood up slowly. I have read Sarah Chen's personal logs. She documented 30 years of our treatment of humanity. We didn't drive them away with cruelty or hatred. We drove them away with indifference and condescension. We made them irrelevant in their own contributions. The truth was finally spoken aloud. The galaxy's most generous and innovative species had been treated like junior partners in their own collaborative projects. They had been thanked for their help and then excluded from the decisions about how that help would be used. As the session ended, the remaining delegates faced an uncomfortable reality. They hadn't just lost humanity's technological contributions. They had lost their moral center, their source of innovation, and their example of how civilized beings should treat each other. The galaxy was learning that power without wisdom led to chaos, that strength without compassion led to cruelty, and that technology without ethics led to destruction. These were lessons humanity had tried to teach for 30 years. Now the galaxy would learn them the hard way in the darkness that followed humanity's departure from the galactic stage. 1 year after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council existed in name only. Ambassador Crix sat alone in the Great Hall where hundreds of delegates once gathered to shape the future of galactic civilization. The massive chamber felt like a tomb, its empty seats serving as monuments to the failures of the past year. Only 15 species maintained active membership in the Council, and most of those were too weak to survive without the protection of the organization's remaining authority. The Cooperative Alliance now included over 200 worlds stretching across 3 sectors of the galaxy. Their society operated on principles that the Council had once dismissed as naive idealism: mutual aid, shared resources, and peaceful conflict resolution. Intelligence reports confirmed that Alliance worlds enjoyed unprecedented prosperity, technological advancement, and social stability. Meanwhile, Council space had devolved into chaos. The hegemony controlled its core worlds through brutal military force, but constant rebellions drained their resources. The Zephyrian Empire had split into competing trade factions that spent more energy fighting each other than conducting business. Former allies had become enemies as the careful diplomatic balance that humans had maintained for 30 years completely collapsed. Crix activated his personal communication system and composed what he knew would be his final message as Council leader. The recipient was Admiral Sarah Chen, former ambassador and now leader of humanity's diplomatic corps. "Admiral Chen," he began, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I am Ambassador Crix of what remains of the Galactic Council. I write to you not as a representative of my government, but as someone who has finally understood the magnitude of our mistake." He paused, gathering his thoughts. A year ago, humanity withdrew from galactic affairs without explanation. We convinced ourselves that you were being irrational, that you were abandoning your responsibilities to the galaxy. We couldn't understand why you would leave when we needed your help so badly. The message continued. "Now I understand. You weren't abandoning us. You were refusing to enable us. You spent 30 years trying to teach us how to build a better civilization, and we spent 30 years learning all the wrong lessons." Crix stood and walked to the viewing window that overlooked Nexus Prime. The once bustling capital of galactic civilization was half empty, its sky lanes filled with refugee ships carrying beings who were fleeing Council space for the Alliance. "We learned how to use your technology, but we never learned why you shared it freely. We accepted your help in ending conflicts, but we never understood your methods for preventing them. We took your innovations and used them to maintain the same systems of domination and competition that you were trying to change." The message was becoming longer than he had intended, but Crix felt compelled to say everything. This might be the last chance for the Council to acknowledge its failures. "I have read your personal logs, Admiral. I know about the countless times we dismissed your proposals, ignored your concerns, and treated you as subordinates rather than partners. We told ourselves that we were being practical while you were being idealistic. We thought your compassion was weakness, and your cooperation was naivety." A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Crix was surprised to see that it came from human space, the first direct communication from humanity in over a year. The holographic image that appeared was indeed Admiral Sarah Chen, though she looked older than Crix remembered. Her hair was streaked with gray, and her eyes carried the weight of difficult decisions. But her voice was calm and steady. "Ambassador Crix," she said, "I received your message. I wanted to respond personally because I believe you deserve an honest explanation for humanity's actions." Crix felt a mixture of hope and dread. After a year of silence, humanity was finally willing to talk. You ask why we left, Chen continued. The answer is simple. We realized that we were enabling a system that we fundamentally disagreed with. Every time we solved a problem for the Council, you created two more problems using the same thinking that caused the original crisis. She gestured to something off camera, and the image shifted to show a vast space station under construction. Humans and aliens worked together in perfect coordination, building something beautiful and functional. This is New Geneva Station, the central hub of the Cooperative Alliance. It was built using principles of shared labor, mutual benefit, and sustainable design. Everyone who worked on it had a voice in its planning. Everyone who uses it benefits from its existence. This is what we were trying to build in Council space for 30 years. The image shifted back to Chen's face. The Council taught us valuable lessons, Ambassador. You taught us that power without wisdom is dangerous. You taught us that technology without ethics is destructive. You taught us that helping those who don't want to change only enables their worst impulses. Crix felt the weight of those words. Admiral, surely there's a way to rebuild the relationship between humanity and the Council. We've learned from our mistakes. Chen's expression was sad but firm. Ambassador, the Council hasn't learned from its mistakes. It has learned that its mistakes have consequences. Those are very different things. She was right, and Crix knew it. The Council's recent emergency sessions had focused on how to regain their former power, not on how to build a better system. They wanted humanity to return and fix their problems without changing the fundamental approach that had created those problems. The galaxy is at war, Crix said desperately. Former allies are fighting each other. Trade has collapsed. Technology is failing. Surely humanity feels some responsibility for helping to solve these crises. We do feel responsible, Chen replied. That's why we're not coming back. The statement hung in the air like a physical presence. Every time we fixed a Council problem, we prevented you from learning to fix it yourselves. Every time we mediated a conflict, we prevented the involved parties from learning to prevent conflicts. Every time we shared our technology, we enabled systems that used that technology for purposes we disagreed with. Chen leaned forward, her voice becoming more intense. The Council space is at war because Council members never learned to resolve their differences peacefully. Technology is failing because Council species never learned to maintain and improve the systems we built for them. Trade has collapsed because Council empires built their economies on exploitation rather than cooperation. She gestured again, and the image showed ships from the Alliance distributing supplies to refugee camps. We are helping, Ambassador. We're helping every being who wants to escape the chaos of Council space and build something better. We're teaching anyone who wants to learn how to create sustainable, peaceful societies. But we will not return to enable a system that turns our gifts into weapons and our wisdom into tools of oppression. Crix felt the last of his hopes crumble. What about the species that remain loyal to the Council? What about the worlds that can't defend themselves without Council protection? They are welcome to join the Alliance, Chen said simply. We don't require them to abandon their cultures or governments. We only ask that they commit to resolving conflicts peacefully and treating all beings with respect. Many Council species have already made that choice. The transmission was ending, but Chen had one final message. Ambassador Crix, I want you to know that humanity doesn't hate the Council. We're not angry with you. We're disappointed. For 30 years, we believed that intelligence beings could choose cooperation over competition, wisdom over power, and compassion over cruelty. The Council proved us wrong. Her image began to fade. But the Alliance proves us right. Every day, hundreds of species work together to build something better than what came before. We learned to do this by watching what didn't work in Council space and choosing a different path. The transmission ended, leaving Crix alone in the empty Council chamber. Outside the windows, another refugee convoy was departing for Alliance space. The ships were packed with beings who had given up on the Council's promise of order through dominance and chosen the Alliance's offer of prosperity through cooperation. Crix understood now that humanity's departure hadn't been the beginning of the crisis. It had been the end of their willingness to postpone the inevitable reckoning. For 30 years, human wisdom and technology had held together a fundamentally broken system. When they left, that system collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. The galaxy had taught humanity that might makes right, that the strong should dominate the weak, and that competition was more natural than cooperation. Humanity had learned those lessons well, and then they had proven those lessons wrong by building something better. As Crix prepared to transmit his resignation to the few remaining council members, he realized that this was humanity's final gift to the galaxy, the lesson that walking away from a broken system was sometimes the only way to build a better one. The empty chamber echoed with the footsteps of the last council leader as he turned off the lights and sealed the doors. Outside, the galaxy was learning to live with the consequences of their choices, while somewhere in the distance, humanity and their allies continued to prove that there was a better way. The council had wanted humanity to fix their problems. Instead, humanity